I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, welcome back to News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Donald Trump and meeting with a lot of world leaders the other day. Something that was interesting that's kind of spawning off a little conversation and criticism about people like Paula White, who's been like Trump's spiritual advisor, is that he went on like Fox and Friends and made a comment about, and it was really a joke, but I don't know, this might give a window into some of his worldview and theology that he could basically earn his way a spot into heaven. Like if he's gonna go, it's gonna be because of some of these peace deals, and of course you can't really earn your way into heaven. So there's folks who are, criticizing the spiritual people that he has around him, and I'm like, it could be that people have educated him properly on the matter and he just believes what he believes and takes out of it what he wants to take out of it. Some people can sit in church their whole life and not really pay attention to what's going on, read the Bible, and they retain what they want to retain. I know that sounds crazy, but that's just the truth of the matter. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking some more about the Jubilee video that we talked about yesterday. And it's not the specific clip that I showed you guys, but the topic of systemic racism, because I did watch more of it, and man, it's really ridiculous the sorts of things that Amanda Seales was saying in that Jubilee video, because she didn't really give good examples of what we would think definitionally to even be systemic racism, or if those things qualify, then it's a more ridiculous term than we pondered before. And we'll also touch on some other things as well. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys, go back to news.com, check out different content, website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the site, because it does cost to stream on my site. All the good stuff you guys can support. I very much appreciate you guys. You guys can also support by going to the website and checking out different merch that we have, different t-shirts, and of course we got mugs. We got the pumpkin spice mug that you guys can get at the store, along with other stuff as well. You guys can check out some of my books that I have written. I did find out what I did wrong, because I'm like in the process of trying to get a hardback cover of my book Bigger. My proof has been from Amazon has been shipped, so I should have that by Thursday, I think, unless maybe there's a chance they'll get here early, but it should be by Thursday. But they shipped it. But that's paperback, so I have to go through Ingram Spark to do a hardback cover, and I accidentally just when I uploaded it, I said you read it right to left instead of left to right. Like you would like a manga, or I guess some other writings in like Arabic and other things, books are like that. But so they're like, your interior files don't match this, and when you look at the thumbnail of it, it's the back instead of the front. And I was like, oh no. And so I went in there to try to fix it, and it'll let me upload new files, but it won't let me change the metadata and actually click in there and say, hey, this is meant to be read from left to right. So I was Googling what should I do, and because I don't see an edit option here, I don't think I'm crazy or slow or something. I'm like, I just don't see an option to edit there. And so they really didn't say anything on their side about it, but I saw someone on Reddit say that they had done the same thing. Well, they were asking about it. Someone else had said that they did the same thing, and you just got to contact Ingram, and then they have to fix that stuff themselves. And I hope that they can fix it, because my ISBN number is, tied to that, and each one of those is money. So yeah, just a little bit of plight of a author going on, but I'll let you guys know when I get that updated and situated, because when I get that in my hand, that's when we will move forward, and I'll give you guys a date, an official date, but it should be October, when we're gonna like officially like release that stuff. So looking forward to that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. Anyway, let's hop to it. Let's hop to it. So Donald Trump met, well, we know he met with Putin, was it Friday? And people were flipping out about it and the reactions between the two men. And the media is saying like, oh, Putin, Trump is capitulating to him. And I think it's really neat that since that time, very quickly, he's now met with Zelensky, and not just Zelensky, but all these other leaders. And there's different Obama officials saying that Trump is still, kind of giving Putin what he wants. I'm like, why would Putin want Trump to meet with all of these world leaders and possibly grant security guarantees to Ukraine? Why are y'all just making stuff up? Like, don't you want there to be a positive resolution? Like, why are you doing positive kind of spin for Russia? And it's because you don't like Trump. Like, we should all like hope for the best, push for the best, try to solicit advice for Trump to take, not constantly try to tear him down. Now, if he is doing something stupid, that needs like public correction, yeah, publicly correct him. But I thought it was pretty neat to have all of those world leaders together in the Oval Office, immediately working together to try to save lives and get some kind of deal done or ceasefire, or, and Trump wants to really, really, really solve it as soon as possible, because the longer it drags on, more people are going to die. I didn't even really know about the issue of or I guess I didn't really hear it much reported or talked about too much about the young girls who were taken in Russia. Melania Trump wrote a letter, not that Putin cares that he wrote a letter, but drawing some attention to it. There's some horrific things that have been going on in this war, and there should be a conclusion. We should want a conclusion, and we should cheer on Trump and Zelensky and all these world leaders to get together to try to get on some kind of off ramp. I don't know what realistically Putin will accept, because they wanted all of like Ukraine and stuff, and they didn't get initially. I guess they just thought they were going to come in and wipe out everybody and it'd be over. And people did initially think like, oh, this is going to be really rough for Ukraine, and they've held in there and still going at it. But a lot of people have died. So I wish them the best trying to figure the situation out. I wish them the best. I don't understand. I understand criticizing people you don't like, but when lives are on the line, I just don't get the need to destroy the person at the head of the country at that point. You should want them to do the right thing, and if there's evidence that they're doing something wrong, sure, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Anyway, this was an interesting clip that spawned off some commentary that I thought was fascinating. Donald Trump, I think this is kind of a joke, a bit. Trump is a funny guy, but he called into Fox News and was talking about getting a deal done. And he mentioned that if he gets to heaven, this will be one of the reasons that he ends up being allowed in, I guess.
Just want to end it. I want to end it. We're not losing American lives. We're not losing American soldiers. We're losing Russian and Ukrainian, mostly soldiers. Some people, as missiles hit wrong spots or get lobbed into cities like Kiev and towns. But, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I am really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons. Well, I think I saved a lot of lives with India, Pakistan. They were going at it. The planes were being shot down. That was going to be maybe a nuclear war if I let that go. And I did that through trade. Just want to end it. I want to end it. We're not losing.
Okay, so that's the clip that folks started talking about a bit, and people started calling out Paula White because Trump's saying like, I'm on the bottom of the totem pole right now, but if they let me in, and one of these reasons is going to be because of these peace deals, and I'm saving lives. Now, saving lives or contributing to that is a very good thing. It's a very good deed. But your deeds can't get you into heaven, and you cannot get there by your own works. So no matter how long you live, no matter what you do, there's nothing that you can do to earn your way into heaven. It's just that kind of amazing. It's not something that we really deserve, and we are all sinful people. We've all committed different sins. We can't pay for our sins, but Jesus Christ paid it all. So trusting in him is what gets you into heaven. To get to heaven, it requires perfection. He's certainly not perfect. I'm not perfect. But Jesus was perfect, is perfect. And he was that spotless lamb who was crucified, and him being God, kind of makes the sacrifice all more special and able to cover and pay for everybody's sin. The sin needs to be paid for. Trump could never pay enough. I could never pay enough, but Jesus paid it all, and you got to trust in him. And that's it. Now, if you do trust in him, it's going to be evident that you are living your life in certain ways. It's going to be evident. You'll see the fruits of the Spirit produced. So as a result, you'll do good works. You'll do good deeds. You'll love God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. You'll treat your neighbor right, and so on, and act, with patience and kindness, and you'll be forgiving, and etc. So that just is kind of a byproduct of living and walking in the way that is demonstrated by trusting in Christ. So not just doing stuff and getting accolades and praise and patting yourself on the back. That's not what's gonna get you in. But I mostly believe that it's a joke. But is he maybe rooted in some kind of, you do good deeds and they stack up, and you like God and stuff, and that's going to get you in? Maybe that's in his thought process a bit. But I saw some people coming at Paula White like, this is the perfect example of how Paula White, Charlie Kirk, and other pastors of faith leaders associated with the White House faith office has let Trump down. White is a false teacher that has never truly shared the gospel with him because she doesn't actually know or preach it. Trump needs solid pastors, not a bunch of charlatans like Paula White, J.D. Shuttlesworth, Jenstus Franklin, Sean Fauch, and other charismatic pastors that care more about photo op in the White House than sharing the gospel with our commander in chief. So I don't know some of those folks that he listed, actually. Someone already said it would be more theologically accurate to say his current obedience to his calling and enlarging his mansion, not gaining entry itself into heaven, which is through faith. If pastors near him aren't clarifying that, that's on them. Yes. And he said, that's what I mean. They aren't correcting or clarifying because they don't preach or subscribe to that themselves. And then we got another person said the problem is that Trump doesn't want faith leaders who will hold him to God's standard, only ones who will kiss the ring and loudly push Christians to support him. So I don't actually listen. I don't think I've ever really listened to Paula White. I mean, she's been famous for a very long time. Um, I mean, I just remember the big scandal it was when she got divorced, and they're like, "There's no sin," and people are like, "You're getting divorced and there's no sin? Like, why? Why are you getting divorced?" Um, so that was a big scandal back in the day. But she's been, you know, Trump's de facto sort of spiritual advisor for a very long time. Um, I remember them connecting when I was a kid, years ago. So, is it possible that she's not teaching this stuff? I don't. I guess follow her content enough to know exactly what she preaches from the pulpit. And by the way, what you might see people produce, um, I guess, in what they might show on TV isn't necessarily what happens when you go and you are discipled in a church, in the actual church. Um, but I don't have much experience, I guess, with Paula in either way. I've seen her in person. I've been to some of these like pro Trump faith event things, and they're nice. But I think it's hard to believe to just be like, oh, she doesn't preach the gospel. I find that really hard to believe. I think the better explanation, I guess I won't rule it out, but I find that hard to believe. I think the better explanation, because they mentioned Charlie Kirk too. Charlie Kirk knows the gospel, and Charlie Kirk can explain it very well. Um, I think the better explanation is that people hear what they want to hear, and people believe what they want to believe. Um, my dad always preached, about like holiness stuff, not like you can't wear makeup or anything like that, but just, keeping yourself, living right. And he was deeply into apologetics, and he'd be like, scientific facts that prove that the Bible is true, and knew a lot about like end times and all this kind of stuff. Always loved the word, and preached it vigorously in the church. And yet there are people who were there years ago, and they just didn't retain much, they didn't listen much. I don't know, some people will go to church even like religiously and sit down, and they will take what they want out of it, and they won't study. I heard someone who grew up in church say that, just kind of come to the revelation, like, oh my gosh, they're repeating the same stuff in the gospels, like they didn't know that they are the gospels according to these people, or like retelling the stories. It's like, oh, so you didn't, it's not just you didn't read them, like you're just not paying attention to anything at all. And it's not like um we didn't have Sunday school. It's not like we didn't have Bible studies and service 3-4 times a week. Some people will just literally sit down and not pay attention to what's going on at all. So people could have sat down and explained the gospel to Trump, and I'm sure in sitting down in different services that he's gone for political purposes, or I don't know, funerals, or just watching stuff on TV. He watched Paula White, and he reached out to her because her channel or whatever would come through Mar-a-Lago, and he liked her, and he reached out to her and was like, just so you know, I've been watching your stuff, and I consider you to be my pastor. And that story is like from when I was a kid. I heard her retell it in person. But it's funny because she wasn't going to pay for that channel because she was on TV different places, and she just felt the Lord tell her like, no, you should pay for that like little station. And that little station that she went ahead and paid for got into Mar-a-Lago, and that's how they connected. So I you cannot like her. I do think there's some connections there that seem like it was God working. Does that mean she's always in the right in how she teaches? That she's perfect? that she's a perfect teacher, he's a perfect student. No. Um, there could be people in his life or around him that will tell him to get right and minister to him and maybe gently rebuke him. I don't know. Maybe those people aren't asked to stick around and come around that often, but maybe there are people who can be more frank with him. I'm not sure. But I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, these people just assume that he doesn't know more, or he's not reflecting it or relaying the gospel message well because he's never been taught that, or people just come around to kiss the ring. I just have too much experience with church people to just jump on that train. I just can't. So my recommendation is to really, really get saved. And if again, I think it's a joke, him saying like I think I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. There's a lot of people. It's a big pole, I guess. There's a lot of people underneath this earth who are really terrible. Though maybe you're not necessarily at the top, but you can't earn your way into heaven. Again, I think it's mostly a joke. But I do appreciate that he himself understands that he's a flawed person. He doesn't go around like, I'm so great and it's just a slam dunk. I can appreciate that. I know some years ago when he was running in 2016, or maybe he said it back in 2015, he was asked a question like, have you ever asked God for forgiveness? And he didn't really have an answer, or he said that he couldn't think of anything to ask forgiveness for. And I'm like, sometimes when people talk about when they have job interviews and they're like, well, what are some of your weaknesses? And you're like, oh, well, I care too much, just some kind of like humble brag weakness that you relay in the interview. Maybe that was him just kind of, I don't know, humble bragging a bit and not trying to admit some kind of flaw. Because when I heard that, I'm like, okay, if you never asked God for forgiveness, you've never repented, then I guess you're really not saved, Mr. 2 Corinthians. And that was another wacky thing too with the 2 Corinthians. He got called out for that. But I know he's been watching Paula White and other folks for years. So a lot of people culturally like Christianity and community and going to church and kind of the aesthetics of it and maybe the general message of it, but they're seasoned people who frankly don't get it. So I just don't think all the criticism there is warranted. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that. You can go ahead and not like Paula White. A lot of these people who I see criticize her, I'm not into a lot of things that they believe myself. So, no, you just can't make everybody happy. But I hope at the end when he's in the end when he's at the end, I just hope he knows and at that point of time has fully put his trust in the Lord. That is my hope. Anyway, I want to revisit a conversation that we had yesterday. We talked about Amanda Seales on Jubilee, which, by the way, I did get hit with a copyright thing. Not a strike on YouTube, but it just was like, this is ineligible to be monetized. That page on YouTube, the Jubilee, they are hard sticklers about that, and you can claim fair use, but they don't want you to be allowed to really use it at all, which is interesting because people talking about their stuff obviously leads to more people watching their stuff and being a very successful channel, like people talking about TikTok on Twitter and stuff. If it's not viral, I'm pretty much never talking about Jubilee episodes. So I don't subscribe to their content. I don't really talk about their content that much unless it's a topic that is viral and it came to my attention because it's viral and I'm interested in that particular topic. But Amanda Seales talked to 20 Republican black conservatives. They aired it on Sunday. It's filmed some time ago. I think back in June maybe. And we talked I showed her a clip of her talking to one young man, and she's like, you talk to me like I'm your mama. And I'm just like, ma'am, you are not his mama. Why would he talk to you like that? And I watched the section about critical race theory because one of her claims in Jubilee, when you're surrounded, you have you versus 20, 25 people or whatever. And so she was a black radical. She wouldn't claim to be Democrat. She wouldn't claim to be a liberal. I think she might be communist. I don't know if she would like totally accept that title, but she said things that were kind of red flag to me. Red flag about the red flag, I guess. Railing about against capitalism and naming like other sort of radicals and the, I think she just kind of stems from things that are seeped in that sort of ideology, like CRT and other stuff like that. But she said the wildest stuff. And so when she gave her examples of critical race theory, one of her examples was redlining, and that's not hard to believe because that's usually what people bring up first. I think it's funny because that happened under FDR, but she brought up redlining, and she brought up schools. Like she brought up school choice. And her reasoning was that if you have private schools, then you can do segregation. And that was really bizarre to me. Because just because you could do segregation doesn't mean that people are doing it or would do it. But first of all, let's go back to the redlining. Redlining has been illegal since like the 60s. And if it's illegal to do it and you're saying this systemic racism, the system forbids it now. 100% the system was doing it before. But now we are at the point where the system forbids that sort of behavior from happening. Like if you are doing anything with like federal loans or anything like that that's tied to that stuff, you cannot just discriminate against people. Like there's that town in Arkansas that's trying to be like all white, no blacks allowed, no Jews allowed, no gays allowed. And they're like, how can they get away with this? And it's like, well, it's all like privately owned and all that stuff right now. I don't know who's going to challenge in court or if they're going to challenge stuff in court. I wouldn't bother challenging in court because I'm like, why would I want to live in a community with a bunch of cuckoo, cuckoo, culty type people? It sounds cultish to me. I wouldn't be like, God, I don't know. I hope they don't all drink some Kool-Aid in a couple of years or whatever, but it seems wacky to me. But you can do things when it's all private, and I'm not 100% sure if you will 100% get away with that. But if a black family wants to move their child into a private school, and they do, obviously that school isn't segregating and not allowing black children. So it's all very strange. Like, and so many black people like school choice. Like I grew up in an urban community like for having my school education, and then we moved to a rural area. So I graduated from public school. I was in public school my whole life, but the right public school can make a huge difference in one's life. The education difference was insane as far as like resources and just attitudes of the parents and the kids and involvement and teachers, and it was just night and day. It was a whole different world. And And then after we lived there in the rural area a little bit, we ended up moving to a more suburban area. And that's where my youngest two sisters graduated from uh, the burbs school or whatever. So we've lived in some diverse places, I guess, in my not too long of a life, but getting longer, but not too long. So I had cousins who moved from like an urban area to suburban area, and just changing schools changed their lives, I would say, as well. The sort of opportunities and environments that they were introduced to really put them on a better path. Um, and I have a cousin, she, is raising her kids. She's out in Arizona. They have school choice. I think you still have to like 10% has to go to like the schools, but you can use the rest for your kids, and she loves it. Some of them have, at least I think one of them has graduated. They're nice looking Republican young men and girls. Some nice Republicans. But black people like school choice. So to try to list that as an example of systemic racism was just bizarre, that people would take taxpayer dollars to fund education where parents get the opportunity to say, this is what's right for my child. And now I have the instead of the funds being locked in the failing school that I don't want my kids to go to, it can follow the child rather than follow the system itself. So my real problem, and I touched on this, I guess, yesterday, I mentioned this, is that folks like Amanda Seal can talk about how bad the system is, but they're the troublemakers. They're the ones who are causing issues. Like there's this one video that was very viral years ago, and it was talking about redlining and how different people from different communities can grow up so they can live close, but things be so vastly different for them as far as like opportunities and so on. And like, well, this child Jamal here, his parents, his grandparents had bad property value because of redlining, and so been opened up with, okay, but redlining has been illegal since the 60s, and it led to some really good results as far as loans and home ownership and et cetera, et cetera. And they brought up education and how, since the property value was down for Jamal, the schools aren't as nice. And Ben's just like, okay, well, you could do things like school choice where Jamal could go to a nicer school and get access to those opportunities. And where your property tax dollars might be going to, like, fund nicer schools, or maybe there's less property taxes in some areas to fund maybe some not so nice schools, there's still a lot of dollars coming from the government, like federally and other places, to help those schools along. And whether maybe it's bad overhead, different money, how they dish out administrative roles, or sometimes it's just people flat out stealing the money. Like we've had some issues in corruption in places like Pontiac, where we lived and stuff, where folks would just misuse money, steal money. I've told a story before about my eldest sister. She graduated in 2000, and she heard stories from like older people in church, not too much older, but they about how there was a scholarship that I think by Bill Gates and stuff to like get new computers and stuff for the school. And she's just like, where are new computers? So she asked about it, and she's like about to graduate, and they take her to a room, and there's all these computers in boxes, new computers, haven't been touched, have not been used by children. They're just sitting in storage. And they're like, well, they just kind of didn't work or with the system that we had, and they never got programmed or whatever, so they just kept them in here. So it was new computers that were donated to the schools, and they just let them rot or whatever. And by that time, they were maybe starting to get outdated, because computers can get outdated pretty quick, but just let it sit. And when she was just baffled by that. She's like, my dad loves computers. He would have volunteered. You could have got some other dads to volunteer to figure it out. Why just let it sit and not do the work to utilize what was given? Like, and that same sister, she was supposed to have scholarships where she wouldn't even have to like pay for books. She'd go anywhere in the state. And they ended up messing up her paperwork and all kinds of different stuff where all that stuff just kind of disappeared. And so in the long run, it was a I would say orchestrated by the Lord, because her life was redirected in a path that was more conducive to following his will, I suppose. And my dad was in London, and the Lord was just like, are you willing to sacrifice your daughter's education on the altar like Abraham and Isaac? And he's like, sure, but I can't. She's about to be 18. She's got all these scholarships. She's like a plane about to go off the runway. Like I can't stop her. And then God's just like, oh, that's about to get messed up. And then he went to like well, I think it was before he left for London or whatever. And then he went to London, and she called him crying about how all her stuff got messed up. And so he's like, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, I'm going to try to go to this community college. He's like, no, what is the Lord telling you to do? And she started crying, and she's like, the Lord wants me to go to Nigeria and fulfill my ministry. And so she ended up going to Nigeria with him for a month and doing mission work. So it's a very lovely story, but I worked out for the best. But I just told her to say, like, how they messed up some scholarships and all kinds of different stuff. I guess you can blame it on the Lord, but there are people's hands that did things and entered information wrong in the computers along the way. So there's all kinds of issues that might be going wrong in a school district that leads to bad results. But when you have competition available where children aren't trapped in an area, they can go wherever is best for them and the family. You got options. Like the distance between where I graduated Holly High and like where I went to middle school and like Pontiac and stuff, it's a hefty, it's a drive or whatever. So it's not like around the corner life is so much better. But well, it's just like, I don't know, actually maybe it's just like 30 minutes or something. It's not like it was to the moon. But I mean, I remember like there'd be like a couple, maybe a computer lab or so, like I guess there are computer labs or whatever, and there were just a few like computers in the library. And then I just remember going to Holly, and there were just so many computer labs and so many rows of computers and libraries and stuff. It was just like a stark difference. People talked about like what they wanted to be when they grew up or graduated, and they had all these different plans and like specific things. It wasn't like, I want to be a doctor. It was, I want to be a reconstructive surgeon. And they had like, they could see their future. It was like tangible to them. And it wasn't just like, I want to play basketball and be a beautician. There's nothing wrong with if those are things that you want to do, but people just had a more expansive and diverse dreams. and the people who were like active, like the parents and the kids' education and their after school stuff. I like never cared if my parents really went to that stuff, but sometimes it's like, hey, can you guys show up? Because I like people look at you weird. Like if your parents don't show up, it's like like can you come to this thing? It was just the culture was just kind of night and day. And and sometimes just being around the right sort of environment can change people's lives, like for the better. And I just know examples of kids where they could have went down a really wrong path if not for going to the right kind of school. So if you have, it's your prompt that that systemic racism is real and it's backed by data, like it's undeniable, And the thing that you list as an example is school choice, something that an astronomical amount of Black people support. I saw one poll, it was like, maybe it was like 74% or maybe it was 80% of Black people, but it was, it's popular along party lines for, let me see if I can find that, what I saw earlier today. I think it was 74% of voters support school choice. 66% of voters believe parties, obviously parents, should access to COVID education stimulus funds. Support for all is 74%. Race, ethnicity, Asian, 70%, Black people, 73%, Hispanics, 69%, white, 76%, 70% Democrats, 83% Republicans. It's, it's it would be another 80-20 issue, man. Like, I know Trump has talked about it, but that could be the next real focus of Republicans, to, if they really want to do a long lasting change. That's what they need to really hone in on. We can only talk about gender bathroom stuff for so long, but if you want to, if the systems are racist, like, why would you want children trapped in the racist systems? And it's not just that, I guess, that the government systems are racist. It's like every system is sort of racist, because even when they mention redlining, which again has been illegal for a very long time, so the system is anti those things, but that doesn't matter, because she brought up, there was some kind of like experiment with like house appraisals, and I kind of remember it, but I'd have to go back and rewatch it or whatever and see it again. But she explained it. And they had like the houses, people thought that they were sort of a different value when they had like African stuff in it at one point, or when they like retooled it, so it just had like pictures of nice little white families and stuff. Now I don't know if it was just white and Black family stuff, or if it was like kind of things that look like a typical American family versus like family with some African stuff, because people do gravitate. We are very tribal kind of people, and people, there's a bit of a science to when you stage houses and try to get people to sell stuff. And sometimes when things aren't going well in the market, you could have a big empty house, and sometimes you stage it with stuff so people can come in and kind of see the vision of what it could be, so I don't know if it's down to racial, or if it's down to kind of, oh, this is a family, they stage it this certain way, and this is how I can see kind of my family living in this house. I don't know. I'd have to see if there's some kind of other explanation other than people are just kind of racist. But I also don't know how you can change outside of like, I don't know, the people's hearts just kind of changing. You're always sort of chasing a internalized thoughts, I guess. And I don't know how we realistically police those sorts of things. You could always, I guess, teach people better, but I just don't think Amanda Seales is the one who's going to usher in a new age of tolerance, especially because another example she gave of systemic racism was, you guys remember when there were there were 3 legislators in Tennessee. She brought this up, and 2 of them were Black and 1 was a white woman, and they stormed the Capitol, the Tennessee Capitol, and they wanted them to do stuff with gun reform and so on. And she was like, they don't listen to their constituents, and they expelled the 2 Black men and kept the white woman. And the Black Republican she was talking to at the time knew of the story, and I just didn't know it that deeply, and they just kind of agreed with like, oh yeah, I thought that was messed up. So they found common ground there. Now I think they should have, I don't know. I think that they probably should have expelled them all. She was kept by like one vote. But maybe they should have expelled them all. But at the same time, I'm like, if their constituents voted them in and can just reelect them, what's the point of expelling them if they're just going to be back again? Was my thought process too. So it just kind of seemed like, I don't know, maybe it was the right thing to do, but a little performative, because at the end of the day, we just knew that they were going to be back there again. But deciding to get outs the two Black guys and not the white woman, people had a narrative that they could go ahead and push. Now, my understanding is that the reason why some people did, and she wasn't like repentant for causing an uproar, leading people into the galley when folks should be conducting business, because there's certain ways that you're supposed to act and have certain decorum, when you're on the floor. But my understanding is that they did more than she did. Like, they had the bullhorn and they were pounding on the podium and other things like that. And so if you're going to expel people for certain kinds of behaviors and only those two people engage in the behaviors, and she just kind of stood by them and with them in solidarity or whatever, they didn't do the same thing. So they didn't get the same kind of punishment. But I don't know. When I was a kid, I got punished all the time for being with my bad class. I didn't like it though, but I couldn't go to recess sometimes because the whole class was acting up. I was sitting there doing what I was supposed to do, but I had a bunch of bad kids in I think my fourth grade class, maybe or fifth grade class. I think it was fourth grade. I don't know. It was either fourth or fifth grade. It was annoying. I'm like, I deserve to go to recess. But I was just collectively punished. But even though she didn't do the same stuff, she, again, wasn't sorry. And she was with them while they had the bullhorns and other kind of stuff too. So I think they should have all been punished. Or, just censure everybody and let them get back to their seats. Because it was just all theatrical hullabaloo on everybody's part. But if their constituents want them there, it is what it is. But I don't think that's an example of systemic racism. If it's such a problem that's prevalent in America, and it's your prompt, nobody else brought it up, you brought it up, and the best you got is something that happened under FDR a long time ago that's been outlawed since the 60s. These radical legislators who led a bunch of people into the galley and was disruptive. Like, no wonder why they tried to get rid of them. And school choice, like, those are your examples of systemic racism. It's really lame. It's really lame. And I don't think that you really know what you're talking about. So I wish that I don't know, the Black Republicans had done better. There's some of them who, had good exchanges and stuff, but in that particular section, like, it started off with someone who was asking questions about what she meant by it. And I understand, like, asking clarifying questions, but everybody wants to jump in and talk to her, and you got like 20 minutes a segment, and you can't just, you have to push back on stuff. And it seemed like some of the folks weren't equipped to handle that kind of conversation. Didn't know enough about the topic to push back against the stuff that she was saying. I could have pushed back real hard on like a lot of that stuff, and not even like, I don't know, even if you didn't have deep knowledge about that stuff, like, why wouldn't you like push back on the school choice thing? And if you didn't know the stuff, the premise of Surrounded is that the people run to the chair or hurry up and get to the chair so they can sit down and have the conversation. I don't understand why people are fighting for the chairs. They didn't fight like I seen liberals or whatever fight for the chairs, but why be so gung ho about going to go sit down if you weren't gonna, I don't know, slice and dice. It was very weird. Very, very weird to me. But I would have mentioned abortion. I would have brought that up and said like this. Well, this was my example of systemic racism, and tried to see what she would say in response to that. I'm gonna try to find her comment that she put on the video, because she has a pin top comment. She wouldn't identify as a liberal. Okay. She said a black radical is someone who within their life and livelihood opposes, educates, and organizes against imperialism, capitalism, and colonialism while uplifting art as education, collective liberation, and the protection of laborers and the labor from exploitation by the ruling class. It gives communism to me, guys. It is a stance that refuses assimilation into white supremacist framework as a method of protection or equality. This framework aligns with that of radicals from other ethnic groups and races, fostering connectivity for coalition building. Some U.S. black radicals of note have been Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, June Jordan, Angela Davis, Paul Robertson, Dick Gregory, Toni Morrison, Manning Marable, Robin DJ Kelly, Joy James, Nikki Giovanni, James Baldwin, Nina Simone, etc., etc. She's got a lot of names. Some others from other parts. Yeah. The rest of the comment are just different names that she lists. So, it gives commie to me. That's just like integrating. You can't have those sorts of you can't have those things be prevalent in the United States of America without tearing down different social structures that we have. And some of these radicals are using different issues that we have historically had in America, like racial issues, in order to tear down those certain institutions in America that have made us what we are. Like last week, I showed you guys the whiteness infographic that the African American History Museum put out, I think in 2020, and they listed like normal things, like, I don't know, being optimistic, being polite, respecting property, believing intent matters in the law, uh, not wanting to deviate from a single god concept, like things like that are associated with whiteness for some reason. And my belief of why that was is because they wanted to break down these things. And if people are like, oh, whiteness is bad, whiteness is bad, whiteness is bad, because we're so stuck on racial division. And if people didn't have those, adhere to those certain like attributes or mentalities or whatever, we wouldn't push back on that, because we'd be like, oh, well, these things that we like, that's actual whiteness. And maybe we should throw out some of these concepts and accept other ones. So, I think that she's talked about, she mentioned there were times in our history when Black people did get ahead and then they wanted to tear that stuff down. And there were evil racists that did that and white supremacists that did those sorts of things. But it's also been like communism who wanted to use the plight of Black people to make them more reliant on the government. That's another thing about her being against school choice and being against people going to private schools and wanting to keep them locked into public education. These people aren't the solution. These people aren't the solution. So I think it's really important to keep talking about. And unfortunately, I just don't think, at least especially in that segment, that the Black Republicans were equipped to handle her. Not that she did a great job. I think anyone with any sort of knowledge should be able to say, hey, she's kind of crazy. I think any kind of baseline, but I don't think they did a great job. So, and it's just my 2 cents about that. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blackteeners.com, check out different content of the website. Check out different merch that we have on there, different t-shirts, and like this cool Frederick Douglass t-shirt. And where's my Be Better Not Bitter shirt? Got one that says be better not bitter, but get the cool Frederick Douglass one. We got the pumpkin spice season mug that you guys can pick up. Also have many books that you guys can check out. Most of them are fiction, but I got some cool nonfiction books as well. Like, of course, God is Blatantly Gets Abortion. And I'll have more very soon by the end of the year, at least like 2 new books. So I look forward to that. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow.